this is MassCreative's Policy and Action webinar for July 9th, 2021. Really exciting news. Today's the day. So today, we're going to start here. So American Rescue Plan Act funding. So I just want to remind everyone, there's been some sort of movement here. So again, to recap, there's 5.3 billion, that's with a B, I feel like Dr. Evil, of recovery funding going to the state to distribute from the American Rescue Plan Act. And the earlier this week, Governor Baker's Secretary of Administration and Finance, Secretary Heffernan, said the legislature is going to hold hearings in July. And then there was some back and forth, and some of the legislators said, we're not doing that. And then yesterday, Speaker Mariano said that, in fact, the legislature will be holding hearings later this month. So that's why there's a question mark. But I'm starting to feel more and more confident that, yes, in fact, there will be hearings later this month. What shape they take is still unknown, but the legislature has been really clear that they want public input as to how these dollars are going to be spent. And why does this matter? This matters because we want to make sure that those dollars are used for arts and cultural sector recovery, right? And so last week, I'm trying to remember my dates, the COVID-19 Cultural Impact Commission released their report, right? This was a report that we were working on based on the hearings that we held, based on input from experts, both locally and then nationally. And the big headline is that the report includes a recommendation for $575 million for arts and cultural recovery. And that includes arts education. It includes independent live venues and for-profit venues. It includes museums. It includes performing arts spaces. It includes individual artists. They're all listed out. So there's a link in the chat right now, or hopefully in a moment, that G's putting in, that will take you, it'll automatically download you a copy of that report for you to review. So that's pretty exciting, right? And then to remember, there's also city and town funding, right? So metro cities or entitlement cities. So these are cities that receive HUD, Housing and Urban Development dollars, right? They are also receiving 1.6 billion in recovery funding. And then towns across Massachusetts that are non-entitlement cities or non-entitlement municipalities are going to receive 385 million total. Then we also have county government dollars, which is almost $1 billion in county governments, right, in Massachusetts. But I think we're all well aware that county government in Massachusetts doesn't work the same way that county government works in other states like New York or Ohio. So we don't really have a strong county government. So what's going to happen is that 945 million to those various counties, and it's not all counties, I want to be clear, but that's going to be distributed to the cities and towns in that county. They'll also get an addition, so it's like they'll get an additional sweetener on top of the money that they were allocated either as a metro city or a local municipality. So headline here, tons and tons of money. And we need to make sure that the arts and cultural community isn't just getting state recovery dollars, but city and local dollars as well. And so in order to do this, we, MassCreative, are going to hold a teach-in. It's going to be next Friday. It's going to be longer than 15 minutes. I'm calling in the big guns. I've got some friends, state arts advocates from other states who have been combing through all of the requirements for how cities and towns and states can spend this ARPA money. We're going to have some folks from municipalities in Massachusetts come and talk to us. And then so we're going to really kind of dig into all of that detail. And then we're also going to share toolkits and resources so that you can go to your local community, your local government, to make sure that they are including arts and culture in their recovery spending, right? So it's also timed, right? You know, crossing our fingers that we're also ready to go in terms of those hearings with the state legislature. If there's an opportunity for us to give public comment or submit testimony or even speak at those hearings, we want to make sure that we've got all the details and all the talking points ready to go, because it's going to take all of us to make sure that recovery dollars are for the creative community are included. So you'll see a link in the chat right now. Go ahead, register, or click on that, and then bookmark it to register at the end of this webinar. The next thing we're going to talk about is the state budget, right? Remember that? Remember that other big tranche of money? So this, I hope, is a handy dandy little chart. It tells us where we've been. So the governor released his budget, and then the House debated their budget and came out with a final number. Then the Senate debated their budget and came out with a final number. And we expect today that the conference committee, right, because they have to negotiate the two versions, the House and the Senate versions, that that conference committee is going to release a report today with their final recommendations for the final budget. And we expect that it will include 21.4 million for the Mass Cultural Council budget. And so I've given a little bit more detail here. So there's 1.37 million in earmarks. So there'll be 20 million for the agency to run and to regrant, right? With the majority of that being regranted. And then there's 1.37 million in earmarks that are going to go for specific projects. One that I wanted to lift up, because I think this is an interesting one. Usually earmarks just go straight to a specific organization or a specific project, but this is $1 million that are really focused on recovery for arts and cultural organizations that are focused, you can read it right there, that focus on one or more Asian ethnicity and conduct cultural events, cultural education, or cultural performances. So that's something we haven't seen in a while in a budget like this, but I think it's an important piece of this work. So what's next? So today, cross fingers, everything goes right. The conference committee will formally submit their report. The House and the Senate will vote on that report, and they will vote to approve the full budget. And then they will send it to Governor Baker's desk. And Governor Baker has 10 days to sign that bill. Here are some options. The reason there are question marks right here is because we don't know what's going to happen, right? Here are the governor's options. One, he can sign the whole thing. He can just say, yep, all right, great. That looks good. I'm on for it. He can veto the whole thing. He can say, like, I don't want to do any of this. He can line item veto, which means he and his team can go line by line through the budget and cross out different things and either eliminate them or lower or raise the amounts, right? And then he can send it back to the legislature. He can also pocket veto, which means he basically just refuses to sign it within the 10 days and it kind of expires. But in the case where I talked about any of the options that had the word veto in them, the budget will then go back to the legislature, and the legislature will be responsible for voting to either say, okay, fine, you can do that, or to override the governor's vetoes. And historically, the legislature has pretty much overridden any veto that the governor has put out there. So there's a really good question that was asked earlier this morning, which is, I'm getting ahead of myself. So that's the process, right? So this is where we are, and what do you need to do? What do we all need to do? So here are our action items. As I said, later today, crossing our fingers, the legislature is going to vote to pass the budget, which means that MassCreative and our partners will be furiously working on writing communications and setting up action alert emails that you can use to thank the legislature, because thank yous always matter, and then write Governor Baker to urge him to sign the budget and retain the full 21 million for arts and culture in the Commonwealth. So this is where I get to point out. So there's a really good question, which is, so 21 million in the scheme of like, I think it's a 50 billion budget is not a lot, right? And, Baker has traditionally, he's always recommended the same amount, which is around $16 million. Does it do us any harm to like remind him that there's 21 million for arts and culture? And the answer is no. Here's why we do it. So one, we do it because on the off chance that he goes, oh, wow, there's a lot of public pressure for this. There's a lot of people who support this. I'm not going to veto it. Two, we need to demonstrate to the legislature that we're in this game and we're paying attention. So if we don't do anything and Governor Baker vetoes it, and then it goes back to the legislature and the legislature's like, hey guys, you didn't even try. Then the legislature's like, do you even need this money? And the answer is yes, obviously. Three, we want to demonstrate to Governor Baker that there are a lot of people paying attention to this issue, and there are a lot of art supporters who are politically engaged, right? We're engaged in the policy decisions that are being made, and we want to make sure that he understands that. And then the likelihood is that even if, you know, that he's got a team full of budget analysts who are combing through this budget, it's not like they're going to miss it, right? So we're not sort of reminding him and his staff that it's there. But the likelihood is even if there's he line item vetoes it or lowers the amount, because we've worked really hard and diligently, we feel pretty confident, you know, confident not being certain, right, that the legislature will override that veto. But we have to work at this. We can't, it's a long process, and we're in it together. So the budget has not been passed yet by the legislature. We expect that to happen today. So don't immediately fire off a note to your rep or your senator saying, thanks so much for passing the budget, because it hasn't happened quite yet. But when it does, we'll be sharing, you know, we'll share about it on social media. And then on Monday, you can expect an email in your inbox reminding you that this just happened and offering you some tools and resources to engage. Sound good? Awesome. I'm actually going to pause here for just a second, because I think I have like 3 minutes left, and see if anyone has any questions. Okay. And you asked, you thought it was 24 million. 24 million for the Mass Cultural Council budget? Cool. All right, thanks. And I think G has put the link to the, maybe he hasn't. Maybe I messed up. In that email that happens early or on Monday, we will make sure that there's a link to the commission report, I promise. Any other questions about the budget, about American Rescue Plan Act funding, about the art behind me? It was done by my daughter, who is turning 5 next month. It's great. I'm glad. I'm so glad. This is good feedback that we are being detailed in our webinars. Okay. So with that said, I'm going to remind you that these webinars are just simply one part of the work that we do, and that if you are so inclined, please consider becoming a monthly sustaining donor. If your organization has received a reminder to renew your membership, please do so. It really does matter. It matters in 2 different ways. One, it keeps our work going. And then the other thing is when I go to meet with legislators, it's really helpful when I get to say, MassCreative is over 400 member organizations and 26,000 supporters who at any given time are paying attention to why the arts matter. So that's just another reason to continue to support our work, and I hope you will. So a reminder, next Friday, we're doing a very special webinar, our teach-in at 9 a.m. And then we will be back with our regular 15 minutes. If 60 minutes is overwhelming, I totally get it. We'll also record it so you can watch it later, but we'll be back on July 23rd with our regular 15-minute webinar. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Have a wonderful day.